Welcome to Creative Youth Agency, where we're doing series on climate change. And it's been very hard chasing down this particular guest that I have here, Ruth Musibe here. She's a writer, a very creative person, basically. She writes scripts here for most of the shows that go on TV. And as a person who's so well-traveled, I think you're a farmer as well. No, but you try to farm.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're very knowledgeable on some of the things with the research that you kind of do, read, and then write. You definitely come across some of the things that we're going to talk about here, especially climate change, in regards to climate change. And we've done a couple of series talking about how humans are contributing to the climate change effects or change of weather patterns here, especially, say, deforestation. We have cut down forests, poor waste management, and things like that. But the reason why I invited you here is for us to have a conversation on how can we reverse, how do we undo these things that we have done?
Okay. Because I have seen some of the effects of climate change. Actually, one of the projects I worked on were looking at the effects of climate change in Uganda. And I remember seeing pictures of displaced persons, flooding. You know, there was a hospital that flooded in Bulisa, and the whole maternity ward had to be actually transferred.
A hospital?
Yes.
Okay.
And water covered, submerged the place. But it is because of the geographical, also the terrain of the land, so the water actually can come and fill up the place. But then, of course, this also goes back to us to think about how do we reverse this effects of climate change. And I think for any project to be successful, you're going to need a lot of data, because data is going to help you to actually have the precision of an arrow. You're hitting straight on what you need. So, for example, maybe we would look at the main issues that I see in Uganda is that lots of people use charcoal for cooking. So if you need data to know how many people are using charcoal for cooking, do they have alternative means other than the charcoal? Can they actually afford gas? We need to know how many families, what are their age groups, you know? And also the other effects like this smoke that comes from the charcoal, the burning, the deforestation, how many trees are cut down to actually make this charcoal. We need all that data and who does this and where, so that we can actually direct our messages to these people and give them a solution. If it is gas, if it is, we need to know their source of income. Can they actually afford an alternative source of energy if they're not using trees, if they're not cutting down trees? And we need to know how many trees are being cut down. How can we actually grow back these trees, you know? So we need all that data to collect it and know who are we going to talk to, who are we going to direct our messages to actually combat these effects of climate change. And there's so many in all sectors, in agriculture, you know, on the environment, you know, on the environment there's so many things we can do.
You know, you were talking about charcoal and firewood, and you're talking about the alternatives. Are people really willing to forego the firewood or the charcoal they are used to for gas, or some things are just too traditional for them? It is part of, and you know, locally here, and I've had it before, to mean that the food that has been used, that has been prepared using firewood, tastes better. Are we really willing?
That is why we need to collect this data and know, why is this person using charcoal? Why are they actually using firewood? Now, like the point you just brought up, very many people believe it is tastier, the food is tastier when you use charcoal. And there are types of food now, like matoke, if it is in banana leaves and all. People believe it will only be good if it's on charcoal and it keeps it warm and all that stuff. So that is why we need to, you know, come up with real means of communication. Talk to this person, understand, why are you using charcoal? Would you be open to an alternative means of energy? And also to give them stories of actually people that have actually transited from using charcoal to other means, and life is moving on. And also show them the advantages and show them that there is an alternative which is safer for the environment, safer for the new generation. Because what kind of world are we going to live for our children or for our grandchildren? So we need to look at it in a broader perspective. Although we think that what we're doing now is going to give us tasty food, but what about the environment?
Okay, that's fair. If we don't have data, then we don't know what we're solving.
Yes.
Basically, you can't come up with solutions if you don't know what.
Yes, because you do not know if this person is going to afford the new alternative means.
Mm.
You do not know why they are choosing to use this method that they're using that is having diverse effects on the environment.
Mm.
Yes, so we need all this data. We need
Okay,
to know.
fair point. Now, there's one, I always think about it, and I'm being attacked every time I speak about this, which is plastics. People throw, you're driving and then someone throws they're done with the either chapati or then they throw the cover outside, or maybe the soda they've drunk and throw it outside. And then eventually you find some of these plastics into drainages, and then you see the floods that we have around Rugogo here. What can we do to stop this
Honestly,
madness of poor waste management?
well, I'm already seeing solutions of sustainable waste management where they're actually recycling plastics. But then I think all of us need to do this, Darren. It is not an individual responsibility. Rather, it is not one person's responsibility. It is everyone's responsibility out there. Because now I'm seeing there are bins that are there to collect plastics only.
Dustbins.
Yes. You find there's one for food waste and then there's one specifically for plastic. Yes. So you find that when these guys come and collect them, they go
Or
and
they separate
recycle.
the rubbish at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but we humans, I think we just don't follow. I don't know how many people actually follow the instructions of that and say, this plastic is for, maybe this is for plastics, this is for foods, and the other, I don't know. I find usually three of them. Do people actually follow those, or for them as much as long as?
Actually, they will help you if they are to put even that waste in the bins. Because like you said, people just throw stuff around. And it just surprises me because sometimes you're even in a public place, just someone eating and they throw that thing down. And then I'm thinking, okay, what is going on here? But, well, I think we actually really need to, these messages need to be hammered, repeatedly for people to understand them, for us to understand them, and for us to take responsibility. I know we need to stop this madness, by the way. Like you called it madness.
I call it madness.
We really need
because
to
it shocks
stop
me. People have no shame.
Yes.
Mm.
And
there is something. The first time I came in touch with the conversation of global warming, I must have been young, and this should have been about 2006. I made strong arguments and said, hey, look, in my mind, global warming or climate change was about just heat at that time. And it was rain. So I tell my cousin, you got to be joking. This must be science that we don't understand. Or people are just coming up with conversations to kind of, I don't know, scare people or something like that. Because there used to be a rumor by one of the street papers, I think it was called Red Pepper by then, I no longer see it, when they used to talk about asteroids that are going to hit the earth and everything. So I told my brother at that time that this is another conversation of Red Pepper telling me about global warming. I don't think it's real or in existence until I experienced something. But before I tell you what I experienced, at what point did you find out or acknowledge that there is actually climate change? When did it occur to you and say, this must be real?
And when you talk about that, it reminds me of even our search engines. Depending on the location where you are, you'll put in Google climate change is, and then sometimes it shows you is real, is a hoax. So you get to know what are people actually thinking, But the first time I thought this was real is that documentary we did, and I was seeing our stories of people from regions where they were talking about growing up and there were acres and acres of forest cover, and right now it is not there. and there is drought and hunger, real hunger. These were real stories. I think the documentary is up on YouTube, Climate Change in Uganda. And the flooding and the hospitals. Growing up, I never heard of Lake Victoria flooding. But now the sea levels, they keep fluctuating.
Keep going up.
Yes, and they actually flood and come to where the people are. You know? That is when I said, okay, something must be going on. But even the levels of heat, I don't remember it being so hot like it is now. I do not remember it being like that. So that is when you say, oh, this is actually happening. Climate change is actually happening. And even the efforts, you know, like we went to plant some trees in a forest reserve. And when you see people coming out with ideas like a forest reserve, it means it's a solution to an existing problem. It means the forest cover has actually been depleted. So they are now creating forest reserves. So that's when you say, actually, this is real. And people are actually doing it. And there is a young girl that I saw who chose to plant 100 trees for her 15th birthday.
100 trees for 15th. Okay.
Yeah. So she actually began a project of birthday trees and said, you can't celebrate your birthday by planting a tree. Yeah, you know, so when you see all this action, you better know that it's a solution to something. Yes.
Okay. Quite interesting. I also discovered it a little in Etafe now. This is how I knew. It rained for 3 days consecutively. And in those 3 days, I had never seen a coffin that has come out of the ground. And I saw, yes, and I saw coffins pass in the compound. A coffin would literally go and wonder, where is this going? And here's what had happened.
Water driving them.
Yes, but the reason for that water to come was because plastics were thrown in proper drainages, where ideally, if it had rained so much, that water was supposed to use those drainages into the swamps, into the rice schemes. I'm talking about Doko in Butarega district here. So when the water came and it had nowhere to go because plastics have blocked the passages of drainages, water just moved into people's compounds and removing graves and what, and fish would literally pass and eventually dies from somewhere. Now what happened eventually when it dried out, there was not enough water that had gone into the swamps, and rice is grown through water. It's a swamp, there must be water in it, and then it was not there. Or if where water had gone and it was in those swamps, it actually killed the rice. Guess what happens next? Starvation. And that's when I realized, we are actually this careless. And that's when the knowledge of soil erosion was also making sense.
Yeah.
Because when they then cut the trees, you are unable to hold the soil, and then what happens? It floods off. Anyway, I know we're coming to the end of this information you're giving us.